Funding for Inner Compass is provided by Calvin College.
The life that's unfolding,
the world that awaits,
gifts that are yours to explore,
and God's to use.
It's all happening here at Calvin.
Welcome to Inner Compass. I'm Shirley Hoogstra. How would you like to walk up to a line of homeless people waiting for food and offer a respectable job to everyone who wanted one? Our guest today had a chance to do just that. Find out how it went. Join us on Inner Compass.
From the campus of Calvin College, this is Inner Compass, exploring how people use faith and ethics to guide them through critical issues of today.
My guest today is Ron Jimmerson. He is the Community Partnerships and Workforce Diversity Manager at Cascade Engineering, a plastics manufacturer right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
When did you first start this program of getting people off the welfare rolls and into the workplace?
Well, we had our false start in about 1991, 92, when Fred wanted to hire a lot of the homeless. And so we did a screening process. We developed transportation to get them to work and what have you. And we had about 20 of them that were employed, but they only lasted 2 weeks.
So back in 1991, 20 people get this opportunity for
Yep.
a great job, and within 2 weeks, everyone's quit.
Everyone's quit.
So what did that do to your morale?
Well, it wasn't good, and we had to, revamp and look at where do we make the mistakes and what have you, what went wrong, and that took us another few years to really even look at that.
So what went wrong?
Well, basically, there was two major things that went wrong. One is that we didn't understand the people that we were hiring. They were different. They were homeless. Two, our culture was not conducive to accepting them in because they were viewed as being the welfare folks or the homeless folks in the company, the other people. Right. And then the other problem was that many of them had a lot of barriers that wasn't addressed before we brought them into the company, because we had problems with the driver stopping at drug houses and those type of issues. So
now you did partner with Faith Inc. at
Yes.
that first try,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a church-based
faith-based organization.
All right.
Absolutely. And we thought that they were doing the proper screening and evaluations and what have you, but they weren't, as many organizations today still aren't. And that's one of the reasons why at Cascade we develop our own assessment tool to determine the barriers that an individual might have coming into our company.
So people are now coming directly to you in terms of a hiring process?
Absolutely. Because over the years it has really evolved. We partner with the Department of Human Service. I'm the only company that I know of in the nation that has a Department of Human Service specialist on board 8 hours a day.
Now that's something that you learned from this first false start.
Absolutely.
And you had a second false start in 1995.
Right, that was with Burger King, and we had just started partnering with the Department of Human Services. And as a matter of fact, I was sitting down at the Department of Human Service interviewing people to be hired.
All right.
And the whole notion there is that we would start them at Burger King. And if they did really well at Burger King, good customer service, good attitude, good attendance and what have you, then we would move them on to Cascade. And what we found there is that what Burger King was paying would not support the income level that many of these families needed. Plus, many of them had already worked at Burger King.
So low motivation?
Low motivation, very low motivation.
Now, from a common sense point of view, though, it seems to make a lot of good sense.
Absolutely.
You have an entry-level job, and then you move on to Cascade, which is a higher paid,
Right.
maybe more responsibility kind of job. So common sense alone does not solve this problem, does it?
No, not really. But one of the things that's interesting, we're using that concept today, but it's with another company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, with Butterball. And so basically, Butterball would take people who might have barriers as far as language, and they work at Butterball for a year, good attendance, learn English, good customer service, and then Butterball refers them over to Cascade Engineering.
And Butterball is what type of company?
They make butter for your McDonald's, Burger Kings, and a lot of the restaurants and what have you.
All right, so they're a manufacturing type of entity as well.
Right, which is really low pay and not very little career opportunities,
Okay.
and that's why we were able to really connect with them, because they were having a hard time with turnover. great turnover. But see, you put that carrot in front of them. If you stay there for a year, then you can move over to a company where there's a lot of career opportunities. So the concept, works. We just was doing it in the wrong way.
Okay, so you kept trying and you found a better partner.
Yep.
After 2 tries, so you start in 91 and you have a false start, you have really a downtime while you're learning. You start again in 95, you have another false start. Why didn't you give up?
Well, basically, we don't give up. We're always looking for ways to improve and how to make things better, and it was just our lack of knowledge. And the more that we attempted, the more knowledge we began to gain. And before you know it, we had an excellent program up and running.
Now, your president, Mr. Keller.
Yeah, Fred P. Keller.
Yep. He, first of all, hired you. So he had the good sense to get the right person in this particular role. And then he himself is very committed to making sure his company is behind this social program that's
Absolutely.
better for the nation. What motivates him?
What motivates him, you have to understand, and in some of my presentations I have a chart where we have a quote from Fred. And he started the company in 1973, and the reason why he started the company is to show that you can make money and still have fun.
Right, because people are going to want to know.
Absolutely.
Is this completely, am I eking out my own existence if I'm going to be doing this, or is there a profit piece here for the businesses?
Absolutely. And it ended up being a profit piece because we developed what is known as the triple bottom line.
What is that, the triple bottom
basically,
line?
most companies in America are interested in the bottom line, which is the financial only. And they really don't care, in most cases, about their people or their community. The triple bottom line looks at your not only the financial, but it looks at the social, which is your people, and it also looks at the environment.
So let's concentrate a minute on the people, and we're going to just touch on
Sure.
the environment later. When we say the people factor, you have pretty high retention in your company.
Absolutely.
And what's that from?
Well, basically, the high retention is from what we're training them. Because many of the low-income individuals coming into our company, they don't understand the expectations of the middle-class business world. They don't know the dress, the language, the attitude, the behavior that is basically needed for them to be successful. And many of them have barriers that need to be eliminated before they're actually hired. And that's why we have orientation before they even get placed on their jobs.
So you've taken this idea and looked at it from a very 360 degree or holistic way, from
Yes.
The hiring, the training, and then the support on the work line. There's a book by Ruby Payne called The Framework of Understanding Poverty.
Yep, a framework for understanding poverty. Yep, our HR president got that book back in 1998. And he just made a few of us read it. And as I was reading the book, I seen my complete story in there because I came out of generational poverty.
So could you tell us a little bit of your story?
Well, basically, it's where I grew up in lower class. And I had no idea about how middle class functioned because basically as a black man, we were basically segregated.
Right.
So I had no idea what the rules were, the hidden rules, the things I needed to know in order to be successful in the middle class society. And really, in reading Ruby's book, then I can relate back to some teachers who basically helped me understand that there was another world out there called middle class.
She talks about it in terms of the hidden rules, doesn't
absolutely. And see, that's another area where, somewhere there's a book where it's written, "The truth will set you free."
The truth will set you free.
I don't know what book that is, but you might know. But really, what we have basically done, we have kept the truth from so many people.
Right.
And this is why Ruby's book and then our diversity training is so critical, because most poor people don't understand, why am I poor, or why am I treated this way? How did all this come about?
It's almost like giving them a set of keys or a map to understand their set of circumstances.
Absolutely. And then providing all the necessary resources that they can begin to develop and make the necessary changes so that they will be successful in the middle class society.
I think I read in some of the literature that if you grew up in the 60s, to say that you were lower class or middle class or upper class felt like a moral judgment, and people were opposed to actually even naming that. Was that a problem?
I think it was a problem, but it also just really escalated the problem, because when we refuse to identify that there is a problem and address it, then it's just going to get worse. And that's what we have seen basically in America. Because if you notice, every person who runs for political office, they're always talking about what they're going to do for the middle class.
Right.
Just think back, everybody running for the middle class. Now, they'll talk about the elderly, and they'll talk and accuse one another for doing too much for the upper class, but they won't talk about that lower class. And those are the ones who are lost. They don't understand it. And a classical example, I was sharing with you that I do a prison ministry.
Yes.
And so many of the men coming out of prison are basically coming from lower class.
Right.
And so when they come out of prison, they have a mind mentality of, let's say, a baseball player. But they're released in a system that's playing football.
But they don't know.
Right, so who's going to lose? This is why the return rate of men and women going back to prison is so high. That it's the same applies with the welfare system.
Right.
Because we're not teaching them the things and giving them the support, the things that they need to know.
So when you hired some social workers to work at the company, where part of their work was to help translate those lower class rules and educate them into what are the middle class rules?
Well, that training is done before the person begins out on the floor. That social worker is there to provide the resources. See, one of the things that we had did in America is that we have been led to believe that it's money that will move a person from lower to middle class.
Absolutely, that's what we think.
So everybody thinks it's money.
Right.
And it's not money, it's resources also. Money is important, but having those other resources, how to dress, how to talk, the character that is needed to be successful in the middle class society. And see, we're not teaching them those things or showing them why they need to learn those things.
Sometimes I think about it, I've seen as a safety net.
Okay.
Where if you have car trouble, but you've got other people that help you out with your car, or if you have a job-related problem or you have a child care problem, there may be someone else that you can call. You can say, Mom, can you come on over and help me take care of my kids today? Or you've got a friend who can do that. But it seemed to me, if you're lower class,
you don't have those supports. You don't have those resources. So even our on-site DHS, Department of Human Service worker, I mean, we partner with 4Cs, which is child care. We cover areas like even money management, because one of the biggest problems and why individuals stay on welfare, because many of them do not know how to manage money. And we have a money management program that is mandatory for all employees.
You have a savings program that's mandatory?
And then we teach them how to manage their money.
Okay.
And that is critical because many of them don't.
Right.
And so they, she provides the necessary resource and is able to refer them out. We have a lot of women when they're first hired that end up in domestic violence. And so they're referred out for help. And the reason for that is because the women have now and men have now went through our training. Okay, and they understand that it's another world out there, and they understand that they got to learn how to begin to save the money. Well, their boyfriend hasn't went through this training, so he still wants them to spend and party where they want to change. So they end up being abused, and that's where the caseworker really comes in handy in assisting them. So this way they don't get into job jeopardy.
This is such an inspiring program because not only is this a job, but this is a life change.
Yes.
And it could be for generations, couldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen that there is now a different way in which the men and women's children are seeing education or seeing work?
Yes, and this is one of the reasons why it's so rewarding, because we have a system called pay for contribution.
Pay for contribution. Okay.
That simply means the more you learn, the more you earn. Okay.
What is it? The more you learn,
the more you
earn.
Absolutely. And basically, typically, welfare recipients are viewed as being lazy, uneducated, and you can't train them. But see, once a person is really motivated and they begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel, they get involved in all the educational programs. If you could see how these individuals have moved up to the charts and are up to level C's and I mean, it will just blow you away. And then to see parents come in and say, oh, you know, I'm going to church now. I've never been to church. And me and my kids are going to church, and we're just loving it. And so, I mean, this is just so rewarding to see the changes and see people grow.
I'm going to guess at some of the C's you've been talking about. I think you said child care. I wonder if it's college or in church. What are the C's that?
Well, that's one of our levels. We have level A, B, and C, and D.
Okay, and what are those?
And basically, those are, at each level, you receive different training. For instance, 7 Habits. Every employee in our company.
Stephen Covey book.
Absolutely. Every employee in our company, I don't care if you're hired in as a president, you have to go through 7 Habits. So at each of those levels, conflict resolution, money management. So we have all these courses. This is one of the things we try to convey to the kids who are in school, who aren't going to post-secondary, is that your learning is going to continue if you're going to get into a world-class company.
So you have, I think in your literature I read, Cascade University.
Yes.
And is that where these courses, for instance, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is that where that's taught?
Absolutely. We have trainers who have been certified with Stephen Covey, have been certified in Ruby Payne, been certified in different areas. Dave Barrett runs that department. And if you notice, our program, even our welfare program, is called Welfare to Career. Throughout the state, it's called Welfare to Work.
I've noticed the difference.
And see, when you begin putting career on it, you're letting the individual know that there's some opportunities for you.
Well, career, to me, means future.
Absolutely.
And it means growth, and it means interesting, not just maybe checkbox work for money.
Yep. And if you notice in the case study that I gave you from Stanford University, we had a young lady in there who, that picture was taken when she was on the production floor. She ended up being our head receptionist at our corporate headquarters. We have so many of those stories.
The potential that you must see when you, in some ways, I mean, whether it's an onion, you start to peel back the onion, or you see a flower that starts to grow and get larger, it must be invigorating to see the potential realized in these people.
And see, one of the things that we do, and it's really a hardcore approach, is that in our diversity training, one of the biggest things that we teach is that the individual must value themselves.
A self-esteem issue.
Right. See, we live in a society that really doesn't support that, and that's one of the reasons why if you watch television, all the women have Coca-Cola shaped bodies and all the men have the 12-pack, you know?
Right.
And you go to the mirror in the morning and say, oh, I don't look like that.
That's not me.
And so they have really developed low self-esteem, and we get them to the point where they really begin to value themselves as individuals and understand that they are very important to Cascade Engineering as a person.
In fact, this idea of knowledge is power, and that when you have this different kind of class structure, you're helping develop that idea of self-esteem.
Right, and that knowledge, we're giving them the necessary knowledge, and then they have to make the decisions. And so you see that with our retention rate of 97%, that many of them are choosing, I want to change. See, we have a housing and purchase program, assistance program. Well, we help them purchase houses. Wow. 8 of our welfare recipients now have new Habitat homes because we partner with Habitat. About 20 of them have new homes through ICCF, which is the Inner City Christian Foundation.
It is.
And what we found is many of our welfare recipients were paying more for rent than we were paying for mortgage.
Wow.
And so when they begin moving into homes, one, that means they're going to come to work every day because they got a big responsibility.
Well, and they value that home.
Absolutely.
And they are seeing that that's a quiet place, a safe space, place for their families. And is it exponential?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Right.
And see, this is one of the reasons why that caseworker is on site, so that we can provide all the necessary resources that's going to move them from poverty into middle class.
And the training program is not just for the welfare to career individual. Now, why do the long-term employees or the people that are not on welfare or the people who have been educated and going through Cascade's program, why do they need this training?
It's really funny because when we started the program in 1998, Joyce, who is our on-site specialist from the Department of Human Services, we were taking our welfare recipients through a little mini orientation, culture assimilation. helping them understand what's expected, the behaviors, the attitude, and all those things. So after a period of time, the company looked at our retention rate and seen that it was higher than the normal retention rate of the regular employees.
Really?
Right. So this is where we made a conscious decision that we needed to do this orientation for all employees. So we call it retention before hiring. So they go through this, they understand about diversity, the hidden rules, policies and procedures, benefits and briefs, lean enterprise. So they get all that in that first week. So they spend 20 hours their first week in training and the other 20 hours producing product.
Okay, I'm a business person watching this show. And I say to myself, that must be a very costly program. They're not even getting 1 hour of work out of anybody. They've got 20 hours of classroom. How can that be a bottom line plus for me?
The bottom line plus is the morale. It increases productivity because now the employee knows that this company really cares about me. If you look at companies who do no orientation, they put the person right out on the floor, you know, and see, so it impacts our financial. It impacts productivity. And when our employees find out and they understand all the things that we're doing in the community, all the programs that we have in there, they begin to really care about the company and their productivity goes up, and therefore our bottom line of financial is influenced heavily.
And isn't there a hiring cost? You know, every time you hire someone, that can be $2,000 to $3,000, regardless of whether you're doing the training.
But you know what's really interesting, and what we have found out in the many years, that many companies don't even calculate or understand their turnover costs. That is killing the bottom line of many companies.
Right.
They don't even calculate it. Ours is very, very high. But we look at that front end investment of what's going to happen on the other end.
Right.
And so it's worth it.
Now, managers, and I want to take the story that you alluded to with the woman who now has some domestic violence issues, and all of a sudden she can't show up. And what we know about women who have suffered some domestic violence, there's some shame. There's also perhaps some outward signs, black eyes or other kind of problems. How do your managers get educated around giving that employee some extra margin?
Well, one of the things that we don't change our policies and procedures just for our welfare recipients. Our policies and procedures are across the board. But we have trained our managers to understand poverty and diversity so they understand the individual. And it's no longer a we and they type of thing. They understand that we're all on the same level. We're all part of this big pot of stir-fry at Cascade Engineering. So what our managers do, any employee who's late, who's tardy, who's absent, they automatically, regardless if it's not one of our welfare clients, they send Joyce an email. And so this alerts Joyce, and then if it's a domestic violence, then Joyce can work with that supervisor and we'll keep that person off without them getting into job jeopardy because they are in counseling.
So the manager on the line realizes that someone's absent regardless of how they came into the company, and your social worker follows up then on everybody. So there's this sort of equal opportunity caring.
Absolutely. And even clients who aren't on welfare, they can call their income, or their husband or their wife might have lost a job and they want to know if they can get any type of assistance. They can come right over to our learning community and see Joyce, and she can show them what benefits they can still get and continue to work at Cascade.
So if you're a smaller company, can you actually integrate this idea, this program into the company?
Well, that was one of the problems. Is I travel all over the country and I do a lot of work in Canada. Matter of fact, Canada is moving on our programs faster than America.
But can you tell us why?
The bureaucracy, all the red tape and everything.
So you think in the United States we have too much?
Too much of that, absolutely. But what I was finding is that many companies, you know, they would say, "Oh, this is really wonderful, but I'm too small. I don't have the resources," and what have you. So out of that, Mark Peters at Butterball was working on trying to pull some employers together on the southwest side. And so we had a series of meetings, and this is where we came up with the source model.
The source model?
Right. And basically what that is, they have an on-site caseworker, but it's 8 companies who are pooling all their resources together, providing the same type of training, providing the same type of counseling and resources, and it is really working out wonderful.
Is it?
They went from overall company retention when we started this, I believe in, I want to say 03, from they had a 63% turnover rate. And they have reduced that all the way down. They now have an 87% retention rate.
Well, doesn't that make sense to pool resources? If you're now, if I'm a small company, How do I find out about the source?
Well, we have received a wire grant.
A wire grant?
Yeah, that's a grant from the federal government, wire, jet.
Oh.
I don't know the
Okay.
acronyms, don't ask me on
Okay,
those.
a federal government grant.
Right, but after they seen how successful Cascade Engineering's program was, then the source was developed off of our model. The state of Michigan and foundation said, we want to fund this, we want to get this going, the source type of models going throughout Western Michigan.
In fact, your company has been a real educator of Congress and other state legislatures about how this actually works. And our legislators are interested in doing the right thing.
Absolutely.
And they want to have real stories about it really can happen and not just throw money away.
Mm-hmm.
And so how often has your company testified in front of Congress?
Gee, I couldn't tell you that. We just had Governor Granholm was here last week out at our company, and that was really well. We got opportunity to share our source and reentry and our welfare program and some other things that we are doing that's very unique. But the source model is growing. We just started a new one on the northwest side of town.
What frustrates you, Ron, about the companies that you sometimes talk to that want to improve, but you get there and you say, boy, that's frustrating?
I really haven't ran into much of that because now I have a program I can refer them to the source. Right. Where they can do the same things that Cascade is doing, even on the same scale, and have support from other companies. Because it's really great, having that source model. Because one, if company A is laying off, they can send them over to some of the other companies that are in the model, and they're not drawing unemployment. And we also transfer, as your skill level changes, you can go from one company to another company.
If you were to give a word of advice or wisdom to a company out there that's considering this, what would you say?
I would tell them that they really need to understand how important the community is. America is going to be short almost 10 million skilled workers. And we got to begin looking at how can we begin to recruit and utilize that unprivileged individuals who are out there in the community who are seeking employment. We have a part in the community, and that's one of the reasons why Fred said we are part of the community. So this is why we do things in the community.
Amen.
Yep.
My guest today has been Ron Jimmerson, Community Partnerships and Workforce Diversity Manager at Cascade Engineering, a plastics manufacturing firm right in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'm Shirley Hoogstra, and thank you for watching